that picture. Okay, so yeah, so with that, we are going to get started. So as I stated already, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the coalition's new website and get some updates on that. That's going to be by Hamid Matios. So I'll pass it over to you all.
Yeah, thanks, Tiff. My name is Matios, he, him pronouns again, it's me speaking. I'm gonna introduce the website along with Hamid. And I think what I might do real quick, if you don't mind a disembodied voice, is I'm gonna screen share the website for you, yeah. And folks might have heard about it. You also might have not, so this will. So yeah, as I pull it up, about a week and a half ago now, the coalition released a website called watchthewatchers.net. It's a continuation of our Watch the Watchers program, which is a counter surveillance program that was launched in 2014 here at our home in LA Can. And maybe Hamid, you can talk a little bit about the history and its intention.
So Watch the Watchers project was launched about almost years ago. And it's an extension of CopWatch. You know, people familiar with CopWatch. You know, when people go out and document the activities of the police, you know, any abuse going on, any violence going on, any violation of people's rights going on. So CopWatch has been practiced by many organizations. We've been doing that. CAN has a community watch program. You know, several other neighborhoods just do their own. To see, especially who've been impacted by police violence a lot. So what we did was that back in 2014, we started going out on the streets, and especially if there were big demonstrations and rallies, particularly May Day, we would go out and we started putting the camera from different angles on the police out on the streets, you know, where they were, to document, you know, and even interview them and talk to them what they were doing there, to document their surveillance equipment, document their other tactical operations or whatever units they brought, documenting their interaction with the community, and you know, just documenting in general what they were doing. And then we published 2 videos from 2015 and 2017, which was interesting. On the videos, they are saying that no, there is no surveillance equipment there. 2000, we are documenting all of that surveillance equipment and showing it on camera. So that video is titled Watch the Watchers, They Lie. We did the same thing in 2017 and published part 2 of that thing, which is Watch the Watchers, They Still Lie. It's interesting that how even commanders, they were saying, no, we don't use that. And we documented that, you know, through various research and public records and all of that. So then, you know, so that's been the course of action that the coalition has been taking. Then we were informed, and basically one of the citizen journalists, the name is Ben Camacho. He's a journalist with Knock.LA. You know, he in 2021 or early 2022 filed for public records to get headshots and photographs, official information about LAPD officers. This wasn't new. Ben has already published that on his social media. He has done this with Santa Ana Police Department, and various other groups around the country have been doing that, just to know who the cops are in the streets, who the officers are in their neighborhood, how long have they been in service, you know, what are their ethnicities and stuff like that. So Ben was initially denied by the LAPD that they would not release the headshot. So because the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition has been doing extensive public records work, so Ben talked to one of our lawyers, Shakir Rahman, to see if we can file a public records lawsuit. And it is completely legit, because public records are public records. Public records are basically information about any institution that is supported by the public, and they are public employees. So people have a right, as of the 1968 California Public Records Act law, to get this information. So Shakir and Colleen Flynn, who's also been a lawyer for the coalition and has represented the coalition in other lawsuits too, filed a lawsuit. And then around the end of last year, early this year, I believe, you know, the LAPD finally released those photographs, the headshots, as they call them, 9,310. And what's interesting is that in that process, there's an email exchange between the city attorney and Ben Camacho's lawyers, which is Shakir and Colleen, where the city attorney is telling them that, regarding the disclosure, not the exact words, but the disclosure of these headshots will not include undercovers, right? Or pictures that are missing. So this is the understanding. Ben gets this thumb drive, is familiar about our Watch the Watchers project. We talked about it. We're like, okay, now we were to develop a whole website around it. So the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition developed a website, watchthewatchers.net. And we just put the photographs on here and then received from the journalist. And then in the meantime, we also filed for public records to get rosters, like all the police officers' rosters, asking for their ethnicity, their date of hire, their rank, their serial number, their area of division that they work in. It's all 100% official documentation that the LAPD has. So they just said that, well, we're going to give you all of this information, but we won't give you height and weight. Which we were like, wait a minute, what's the issue with the height and weight? Because that is the most easiest thing for a public employee who's going to have the most contact in the community of any public employees. So this is what basically what we emailed in on each one of these has that all of this information was disclosed by LAPD in late 2022 or early 2023. So this was a coming together of two different public records. One public record of the photographs was filed by Ben Camacho, and the information, the roster information, the rest of it was filed for Stop LAPD Spying. Now, there's been a huge sort of scandal that has been created in the city saying that, this is private information, there's been a breach, there have been leaks, and typically how scandals and sensationalism is created, trying to put the target on us, where the city and the LAPD and the city attorney are clearly responsible because this was the channel it went through, and this is nothing new. And what's also interesting I want to add is that a lot of this information is available on other city portals. For example, the city controller has a portal that publishes the payroll data, which we are trying to get as well, which we will publish around this thing. LAPD in its own, as per California law, SB first 1421, then SB 2, publishes disciplinary record of the cops with their photographs as well, right? So we are going to be publishing those too. So what the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition has done is become this repository and kind of bringing this information that is in different places together, and which is 100% public records. We didn't build anything up. I don't even know what this photo is of Jamie McBride. This is their official photo, and we have put it in a website. And the whole idea here is that this is a community resource. This is about public information about a public employee released by a public institution and made public by these institutions. That's basically, it's all the 100% released by these organizations and all of that. So this has now become a scandal. This has been also published a Google Drive with all the photos on his right. So these are out there. How people use that, of course, we are not concerned about where Jamie McBride lives, what's his address, what's their family, what's the extended family, what he does in his private time. Our focus here is that as a public official in that public capacity, funded by public dollars, working for a public institution, what do people make of that? And it's a community education and a popular education tool. It's a community resource where people can just get information on them. The only other thing that's missing is that because these are the serial numbers, so we know that LAPD officers, their serial number is their email address. So we're also asking for badge numbers. The other piece is that many times we have also firsthand, it's happened to us in our Watch the Watchers as well. And we've seen it happen to people. Other people have complained too, that LAPD is notorious for sharing their name and their information when they are out on the street, which they are required by law. They have to wear a badge, their nameplate. They also have to have the information as well. And they are required to give it out. And there's also city rules that they're supposed to carry cards. That it's us that pass on these cards. And also we've seen in protests and rallies that how they put on their diapers and on their nameplates as well. So that's, you know, for people to access this public information, that's basically what we have done and brought it together. What you say?
Yeah, and you know, we talked about this in our last meeting, but we've already put it in use. Used an earlier version of the site when Stephanie, who runs the White House over at Fifth and San Pedro, when her spot was, for folks that don't know, Stephanie's White House was a resource center. The spot continues to be a resource center for Skid Row unhoused community members, especially for women with children. But you know, during that violent sweep, we were able to identify some of the pigs that were, you know, dancing while the sweep was going on, while they were throwing away people's resources. And so this already has so many practical applications. We've been hearing from community members who were able to identify cops in propaganda pieces, right? Identifying killer cops in propaganda pieces. So there's been plenty of community utility. There's been plenty of public education, delegitimizing the stories LAPD puts forward. So I guess, yeah, what I'd be interested in hearing is if anybody here has used the site yet, how have you used it? If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer that too, but I'd love to hear from y'all. And for the folks in the room, pizza just landed. I encourage you to pick some up. I wish I could share it with you over Zoom. I can't.
Any questions, folks? Any questions about the site? Any comments, any thoughts about the purpose, please?
Great.
And what is NLG?
The National Lawyers Guild, legal researcher program, where organizations will invite us to a variety of options, et cetera, conduct. And so as part of that, I'll also get down there, where the name is, like on the dot, that number, if I can get it. So it's been really fun to go to my notebook. I recognize them, you know, maybe online.
I guess, of course, is already retired. His pictures no longer.
No.
That's right.
We're assuming not because this is only 9,310. So people on the force are about 9,300, 9,400 or something. So this is apparently our understanding is that since this is from late 2022, so this is the latest or whatever it is. So we don't know because somebody did mention that they were looking for one of the cops who was retired and their photo was.
I was looking for a guy, Washington, Sergeant Mark from Southeast Station.
Uh-huh.
Back in 2003, arrested. His picture.
Right. Yeah.
Retired.
That's a good, so if people didn't hear that, I'm sorry, what was your name?
Tom.
Tommy?
Yeah.
So Tommy is sharing that, you know, that they were looking for apparently a retired sergeant and that photo didn't show up. So we're assuming that none of the retired people are on there because we were told that by some of the folks as well. So,
Yeah.
other comments
Just
about
gonna-
the usefulness of this site, that what do people find useful in this thing and you
Oh,
know, what else people think?
yeah, and I'm so sorry. I'm just seeing the chat now. I guess folks couldn't really hear the people speaking in the room.
So we'll just repeat that too.
Yeah. Yeah, Tina, I mean, would you mind repeating? Yeah, you can even come up closer if you'd like. And thank you for letting us know that you can hear that we're still working out this hybrid.
Yeah, so basically, I was just sharing that as a legal observer with the National Lawyers Guild, it's been an interesting exercise to go through my my little notebook where I write down, you know, various cops, you know, if I have their last name or their badge number, and kind of searching these people on this site and seeing, you know, did I get the name right, or maybe they are putting fake numbers now too. Nothing would shock me. So it's been interesting to be able to cross-reference in terms of legal observing.
Thank you for that, Tina. I'm actually reminded of, you know, I saw a
Thank
tweet
you.
on Twitter talking about how he did get a fake number from a cop And he was able to use the cop's name to identify their real serial number.
That's right. The,
File a
one of the
complaint.
community members commented. And Noah, to your question, how would it be possible for me to get the contact name of someone? Please email us at Matthias is typing that email address, stoplapdspying@gmail.com. It's also listed on the website as well, and would be happy to follow up on that.
And then Brother Tommy, if you wouldn't, I mean, yeah, if you want to.
So my name is Tommy, and my question was, there's a sergeant that I was looking for at the LAPD at the Southeast Station who arrested me in 2003, who could have been instrumental in making sure that that wrongful conviction didn't even happen from the first part. So I was just looking for looking for his picture and his identifying information on the website, but the picture wouldn't come up. So that leads me to believe that those retired officers has been removed from the database.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
probably
Thank you,
don't have that.
because others have shared that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments over Zoom?
Maggie, do you have a question? Sorry, I thought you had-
I'm trying to come to one.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, so I mean, I think our goal really is for folks, who are on Zoom and in person as well, that, just as Tommy was sharing, just as Tina was sharing from Legal Observer to being wrongfully convicted and searching. So I think we need to be bringing it out to our communities. What is the best way that folks in the community can access this information? Because we want this to be a community resource as much as possible. I mean, it is a community resource. That's the whole goal behind Watch the Watchers. And then this is, as we always say about a lot of our work, that this is a living document. This is a work in progress. This just got released on 17th of March, which is just about 10, 11 days. And the goal is that we do want to add disciplinary records. We do want to add payroll information. And like I said, that, this is where our tax dollars are going. This is where the public money is going. So people have a right to know. And again, we can't emphasize enough that these are that from what we have, what everybody has said, that of all the public employees, these are the most that the community member would ever come in contact. Like, just for whatever reason, in contact. So I think that's something that people do have a right to know as to who these folks are. And there's a lot of propaganda that what we have heard. There's a lot of scandalous stuff that is being said from the mayor to the president of the police commission, to the chief of police himself, to community members. They are basically putting us out online where, just to instigate violence and completely fabricated and misrepresented. Twice in the media, we have sent them the correction and say, yo, this is wrong. These are lies. So, and they have corrected that because, just how there was this whole, the latest update is, and it's all public information, that some fellow, no idea, somebody named Sutcliffe has a website called killercop.com, who just published, who linked the Google Drive that Ben had posted on his account and just kind of just put a bounty or whatever that is, on cops and put their photos. Well, I mean, there are people like that. So, but the essence is that this is an assault from the state again on people's right to access public information. This whole thing is being now wrapped around in that as well. And today, another lawsuit was so the LAPPL Police Protective League filed a lawsuit and asked Twitter to take down Sutcliffe's Twitter handle and all of that. So then today we got a notice, and then there's a legal document, a case that was filed against the city today, which is now from the Police Protective League, which is asking the judge to direct the city to direct us to take this down, which is like, what kind of what are we doing here? This is such a waste of everybody's time, So these are the games that are being played. But for us, it's also in our fight, it's extremely, extremely critical and to stay vigilant. And that's why I think that's why we have these meetings for the community to come together, that this is an assault on our First Amendment right. This is an assault on our ability to access public information for public education from public institutions. So I think this is where we are.
Thanks, Ahmed. Yeah. Yeah. And that's really it. We encourage folks to use the site. It's watchthewatchers.net. Let us know how you use it. You could DM us, email us. We can amplify it anonymously if you want us to. We could also we just want to hear about how folks are using it. So yeah, that's all we got too.
Cool.
Take it to the slideshow. That's
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, thank you for that update, folks. That is really great to see that work. So what we're gonna do now, I'm gonna stand close to the laptop, so at least folks, if you can't see me, I think you can probably hear me at least. But please indicate if not. But we're gonna start talking about the robot dog technology, the robot surveillance dog. So that's what we're gonna get into next. Matios is gonna pull up just a few slides. I think we just have about 7 or so slides to just be first talking about like we want to talk about our fight against this technology. So we're going to start by just doing a review of like what is it even? Who else is using it? What are they using it for? What do they want to use it for? Where are we at with this fight in terms of like how it's been voted on so far? Like where are we at with that stage and it getting passed and introduced? And then we want to get into some of the things that we are doing in our fight, op-ed, things like that, ways that folks can plug in, also get you all's feedback and thoughts on what else we should be doing. So that's kind of what we're going to get into now. All right, so yeah, essentially in terms of what this thing is, and I'm not sure how much folks are familiar with it, but it's essentially, this is what LAPD wants it to look like on their little slideshow. This is then in the other picture, you see that's the actual technology. It gives us a sense of how big it is. That is it being tried out by French military forces in like a training camp that they had. So it's called SPOT, which I forget what that stands for, but they call it a quadruped unmanned ground vehicle. It's essentially it's a robot dog. It was developed by Boston Dynamics, which is a company based in Massachusetts that specializes in robots for all kinds of different industries, but mainly not policing. They mainly actually don't do anything for police. With this dog, however, they got into, what are the different ways that police might want to be using it? And so that's the way that it has started to take off, has been a focus on police being interested in using this versus like other types of industries. So in terms of what it actually does, like I think that thing on the back, well, the head part, that is like a claw that can actually open doors. I think it has a 360 camera, it has a microphone, it can carry 30-pound payload, it detects, it maps terrain, it picks up all that information, it senses things in space, and all of that information it's picking up all the time, and it is being uploaded to a database called evidence.com, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is a database by police for police, for prosecutors, for the city, where they're constantly gathering and storing information, not even for any particular purpose, except that they want to have it in case they need it to prosecute people or to use later. It's literally called evidence.com. So yeah, so that's what this thing does. And also the software can be modified and customized, which I thought was interesting. So that's kind of, any questions on that so far? And then we can get into like who is using this, like, yeah, Maggie?
Do we have information on where that data is stored physically? Like, is it on a cloud, I'm assuming, there's servers that are.
Great question. That's a great question. So Maggie's asking if we know where physically that database is. Evidence.com, I really have no idea.
my understanding is it is a cloud-based service. Like I would guess like if there is a hard copy, it's probably an Axon, which is in Arizona. Right?
Yeah, I would suspect the same. And then I know that also LAPD is now looking for funding for they're looking for funding through a grant for an additional database system, which I think would be going to Axon as well, who manages evidence.com. And I don't know if that's, I still don't know if that's a separate one or a physical one, but it's essentially they're asking for, it caught our attention because they were like, hey, we're gathering so much video evidence of people constantly that we need $1 million more to store it. And so, yeah, so that caught our attention that way. So, yeah,
Yeah, it was, 1.5 million, right? And then they said they had 6 petabytes of data, which I didn't even know, like,
which
that
was a new
frequency.
word for us. That's right, Pancake, shut it down. No, hell no, he says. Pancake says, hell no to the robot dog. All right, so in terms of like who all is using this, so what we hear in the presentations, because LAPD so far, they've made a number of presentations publicly about this. And they talk about like, oh, well, actually some other police departments are using this. It's not, it's not that outrageous. So a few of them that they've named are the Honolulu PD, Massachusetts State Police, St. Petersburg Police in Florida, NYPD pretty famously now tried it and had to send it back. They had to cancel their lease because of LAPD is saying it's because that NYPD wasn't thoughtful enough to put a policy in place initially, but it's actually because people were freaking outraged when they actually saw what this thing looked like and when they saw it. So it was due to pushback. It was due to people protesting and saying this is dehumanizing. We don't want this thing. Why are we investing money in this? So NYPD did send theirs back. That was successful. People protesting about that. So in Honolulu, they've been using it so far. They've used CARES Fund, which I forget what that's for, but that's essentially funds that are supposed to be used for like health and well-being of communities. And so Honolulu police said, well, we think the best use of this funding is to purchase a robot dog to replace a cop having to take the temperature of someone who may have COVID. They were like, because think of how much we're saving if that cop had to be sick with COVID. So that was their take on application of this funding. So it's very revealing. And the same thing applies like here in Los Angeles, right? In terms of the city and city officials looking at the landscape of all of Los Angeles and being like, where do we want to invest our funding? Yes, we'd like to put it into this type of technology. So but yeah, essentially, so yeah, it is being used by other police departments, but nobody likes it. It is getting pushed back. Okay, so let's go to the next one. And so I think the next one shows us, yeah, so this actually shows us, and I wanted to show this because it's super freaking creepy. And this is how LAPD would be using it. They're very excited about the fact that it can open doors. They would be using it to go inside because this would be used by SWAT. And the main reason that SWAT uses robots now and they use these types of devices, and their main reason they're talking about using it is to go into a space and essentially find someone, to locate where is somebody. So this is a very realistic understanding of how it would be used in Los Angeles. And yeah, and then this other one just gives us a sense of the size. So Massachusetts State Police has been using it. They've been very secretive about, like, they've so far used it on 2 deployments. They've been secretive about that. And it's also been used to clear areas like ahead of time. Like if they have a concert in the park, they'll send it out to check for suspicious packages, which to me, again, brings to mind like the Olympics and that kind of thing. So you think about like these types of applications. So I'll just pause there and see if there's any questions. There's a chat, I think, comment. What are y'all doing?
I think that's Pancake's comment.
What's our time check? Where are we at?
6:53.
Okay, so let's see. So briefly, this is what LAPD is saying they want to do. They're saying this is a lot. This is a very common lie that we heard repeated with the drones, which were launched, started in 2018. They started a pilot program to use drones by SWAT. It was very much pushed back on by community. It was like resoundingly pushed back on by community. And they still went ahead with that, using drones for SWAT. And this is the same lie that we heard then. They said it will be This will be exclusively used by SWAT. Don't worry, just SWAT will have it, and it will be a very limited number of scenarios. So that's what they're saying, that exact same thing. This quote came from this time round with this dog. So they're saying it would only be used for this list of 7 incidents. What's remarkable about this list is that this is the same list they said with drones. And then they immediately, after using it for 1 year, they expanded it to say, oh, we also want to use it for search warrants when we're doing search warrant services, which is pretty significant for SWAT because that's a big part of what they do. So yeah, just noting that. Yeah. So that's the claim of how they'd be using it. And then this slide, just wanting to draw attention to the fact that this is looking at and understanding that when we're talking about new technology, surveillance technology, and where it's going to be used, especially by SWAT, especially by Metro, we understand that policing is concentrated, and that is intentional. It is going to be impacting the same neighborhoods that are heavily policed historically and also currently. And what this map is showing us is that if we look at the most recent year that we have information on LAPD SWAT drone deployments, which again is kind of similar to what they're trying to do now in terms of the program. If we look at how they used drones that year, we see that there was a concentration because of, let's see, of 15 SWAT missions across the whole city of LA. 6 of them were in this very concentrated space, which is just 2.5 miles by 2.5 miles. That's, I mean, to me, that's pretty significant. I don't know what y'all think. And then also just adding on this map, the dashed area, just pointing out that this area in terms of policing is also, and so we see this is the South Figueroa Corridor, Hyde Park area, just very heavily policed historically and currently. And if we look at another type of policing that impacts this community's police stops, we see that this area is also very highly impacted. Since July 2018, LAPD have stopped more people in this area, in the dashed area, than in any other place in Los Angeles. That was the #1. So just naming that we're seeing this just extremely heavy concentration of policing and understanding when we introduce new technology, this is what we can expect, right? Okay, so then getting into the what is our fight part of it and where are we at? So it was accepted by the Board of Police Commissioners. It started there. They said, yes, we think this looks good. We're willing to go ahead with it. That happened in November. Then the Safety Committee passed it. We had 1 no vote on it but in February. And then they debated it at City Council March 7th. And then they postponed the vote. So that's where we're at now. It's going back to City Council by May, but it could be, yeah, it could be sooner. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at with it. And then to some of the things we're doing, and we kind of would love to hear from folks too, because this is where and how we're building our fight is, okay, we're wanting to shut this thing down. We're wanting to get more folks on board about this and to be talking to more folks about it. So we can tell you some of the things we're working on, and we would love to hear you all's thoughts on that and like, what else do we need to be doing? What else could we be doing? Who wants to help us? So some of the things we're doing, and I'll just talk about the myths, and then do you want to talk about the?
We can even show the clips if that's.
Yeah,
something
what do you want to do? I mean, I
Yeah.
just named these like, so,
Yeah, maybe I can show the clips first and then we can kind of debunk the myths just because there's.
okay, yeah,
Is that okay?
yeah,
Do you feel like that's?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, so Tiff was just saying that, they had debated issue at City Council about 3 weeks ago. And the LAPD actually sent out a Deputy Chief Kowalski and a Vice President of I think it was Policy and Government Affairs from Boston Dynamics named Brendan Schulman to really sell the council on these robot dogs. And so in the process of doing that, LAPD just kind of lied a lot. And this guy, Brendan Schulman, whose Twitter handle worth noting is Drones Law, like he's a drone aficionado.
Such a lawyer.
No, yeah. And so, but yeah, no, he talks about, and folks should go check out his page because he talks about how he was really into remote control airplanes before he got into drones. Like it's a lifelong passion of his. But we're gonna play some clips from that debate, just highlighting some of the lies that the LAPD told. So let's do this.
There's so many.
Yeah, we're just gonna produce them. They're really short videos.
And explain to you how, if a policy would be changed, which is not the intent here, similar to the SUAS program that we have, that policy started in 2019, and we have not modified that nor violated that policy in any way.
Can you tell us what that acronym is, please?
Small unmanned aerial systems, otherwise known as more commonly known as drones.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and going back, I do reference the small unmanned aerial system program that began in 2019. That policy hasn't changed, and in this situation, with this particular policy, there's no plan to change the policy.
Yeah, so clear lie right there. Tiff had just talked about how that policy was modified and expanded, once 2019 and most recently in 2020. We also see, here's one from Brendan Schulman talking about, so this similar technology, like a quadruped unmanned ground vehicle robot dog, was deployed and tested on the border by the Department of Homeland Security, and they loved it. They used it for border enforcement. They actually explicitly said how it could be utilized as a force multiplier. And so it's known that this technology has been deployed there. It was deployed by a competing company though, called Ghost Robotics. And here's a clip of Brendan Schulman being asked about how it's been deployed at the border. Oh, and I'm so sorry. Hold on, I didn't share sound just then.
Question, does the Border Patrol use these robots, or are they considering using these robots?
I'll take that question. Spot is not being used on the border, and we do not have any Border Patrol agency customers.
Got it. But are they considering it at all right now?
You'd have to ask them what they're considering.
Okay, thank you.
Very sassy.
Why are you doing that?
But yeah, important distinction. He said spot, which is very tactful of him. But yeah, it's just a clear lie, right? Because we know this technology is being used at the border. The other kind of, let's see, I'm trying to pick a good one here. Oh yeah. Okay, so the other thing the LAPD, the other case they kind of tried to make was that, they needed the spots technology because there's nothing that can get over obstacles in the same way that spot can, especially in indoor scenarios where there might be furniture or something inhibiting one of their track robots. So they simply don't have anything within their arsenal that can do this. And so here's that. This is actually kind of great.
Maneuver through areas with debris. Oftentimes we face situations in houses with barricaded suspect where there's quite a bit of clutter. And when we place in those robotics, if they're on wheels, they get held up and then they're inoperable.
But do you have robotics that can fly? You have drones, right?
Yes, we have drones.
Do they have cameras?
Do our drones have cameras?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you see what the camera is pointing at? Like, do you have a
Yeah,
camera?
so we have, almost handheld monitors to help us give that visibility through the drone.
So you could use a drone, like say here in City Hall, to fly it around, go past the door. You can be on one side of the building and the drone can travel the entire building.
Yes,
as long
but
as
we
not-
wouldn't use that in that situation for City Hall unless it met the specific
No, I
criteria of
know,
our
I know,
policy.
I know. But you could use that in the same situation you described. They said the guy was passed out, or I think the gentleman mentioned it. You could theoretically use a flying drone to see the same thing.
Yes, these are all just different capabilities. They have different capabilities and obviously limitations for each.
Right, I know, but you're describing the spot because it's on its limitations is on the ground, where it's uneven territory. I'm giving an example where you could use something that you already have to do the same thing.
So yeah, and there's so many more, and maybe Tiff can go through that list of myths and lies, but just one bonus one. Krikorian kind of let the cat out of the bag on this one clip that I'd like to share. And it's worth noting, so even when this passed through public safety, there wasn't much resistance, but one thing we have been naming is the 4 members that voted in favor of it have been bought by LAPPL, right? Received collectively over $1 million in donations from them. Krikorian set up this, right, mother of Freudian slips. There's 2 in this council meeting. Krikorian set up this committee. So, we see him as complicit in that. But they really showed their stripes during this specific debate, because those 4 public safety committee members, well, 3, McCosker wasn't present for whatever reason, really went to bat for this robot. And so here's Krikorian kind of.
If we can determine from remote not surveillance, but remote geez, come on, people, come on. This is okay. Okay,
yeah, so there's just quite a bit of that. And then lastly, we've seen from the upcoming budget proposal that LAPD probably does plan on expanding this policy. And that's something that Deputy Chief Kowalski was kind of obscuring or denying. And what we've seen it kind of hinted at is aimed at being used for crowd control, right? And so, we just found it interesting how Ryan Lee, another one of the people that has received massive donations from the LAPPL, when he's talking about concerns for this robot, he does, he lets it slip that, one of the concerns.
I think everyone here is clear on that we don't want this expanded. We want this to be used to save lives. We don't want this to control crowds. We don't want this to be in any situation where it intimidates people.
So totally unsolicited crowd control reference over there, which might speak to their intentions down the line, but that's all speculative. So yeah, this will all go out in the tweet shortly after this meeting, and folks can check it out there. Check out these clips, but this is just hinting at some of where we saw these myths and lies. And so maybe I can give it back to you, Tiff, if you want to go over. Okay.
Can I ask you a question from folks in the room and from Zoom as well?
Oh.
So, if you want to repeat, if people have any who are not familiar with the robot dog, or seeing it for the first time in this case, I mean, if they haven't really maybe, I don't know, Tommy, if you've ever seen that yet. My first time ever seeing the robot dog. The thing that crosses my mind is that even with your
You can even come up, brother.
Okay, like I said,
we get my son next time.
today, this is my first time seeing the robot dog. And like I said, the first thing that crosses my mind is the actual canine used by the LAPD to so-called serve search warrants, like we were saying earlier. But my experience with it is that they would attack and they would bite and sometimes maim, this person that they're looking for, or the suspect, or whatever term they're using after going after the terms that they use to justify sending the canine out. So that's what I'm thinking right now. So what type of what type of behavior are we going to see from the robot dog besides just collecting information? You know what I'm saying? Because it all depends on the people that's controlling it. So that's what I'm looking at. You know what I'm saying? I'm looking at that. I don't know how it's gonna turn out. I haven't seen it in action yet, but those are the things that cross my mind. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you for sharing that, Tommy. And it's what we can expect. We know LAPD has a racist history, so if we give them a new device, they're probably going to use it for racist ends, right? Especially when we talk about the racialized history of canines used by policing to be used against Black folk in the civil rights movement, or even outside the civil rights movement. When we think about the kennel that the LAPD gets their dogs from, called Adlerhorst. It's German, I'm mispronouncing it, but it translates to eagle's nest.
Eagle's nest. Yeah.
Eagle's nest, and that's actually the name of Hitler's bunker, right? And the person who runs that dog kennel where they get their dogs from has a history of lawsuits because these dogs disproportionately attack Black people, even Black police officers. You know, that's happened before too. So I don't think we can divorce this idea of a robot dog from that history of robots. And even in the course of this meeting, it's really disgusting to hear the LAPD talk about how we need this robot dog because of an increase in hate crimes, right? When we know that they're the ones perpetuating hate crimes against our folk. One of the other things I kind of want to talk about, and I've been thinking about when justifying getting this robot, when we've heard them try to justify getting this robot dog, is this emphasis on officer safety, right? And I don't think we can kind of think about, this recent disinformation campaign against, the public records we've been putting forward and the public records people have access to. This whole framing, what was a, well-vetted, thought out process of getting public records as a breach or a data leak or something other as endangering officers, right? We know that that's a fictitious narrative. But we've talked in the past about how, officers don't generally get harmed in the line of duty. A lot of the deaths we've seen related to the LAPD have been due to COVID exposure, right? Restrictions that they haven't kept in place. And so that's something, this whole notion of officer safety is something they're probably going to leverage, and they have leveraged in order to get this robot dog. We saw it right after this vote at the Board of Police Commissioners. Chief Moore talked about how, there was a shooting of 3 LAPD officers. They all survived shortly after at Lincoln Heights. And he talked about how Chief Moore used his chief's report to relitigate this robot dog, not on the agenda, but he brought it up. He said, this is something that could save officer lives in these instances. And so that's something we can kind of expect more and more of. And Tiff, I can take it to.
I'm curious if you know or have thought about how the robot dog could impact probable cause and search. The way that they're talking about the dog being able to navigate different terrain. And I think also your point about how the dog is not a robot. It probably will behave in aggressive dog-like ways. It's not just an evidence collecting system. I wonder if the robot dog being able to access viewpoints that an officer might not could extend could limit the private sphere that is already so limited that protects us from illegal searches. Because the law is about like how a human being, an officer has to be from like a reasonable standpoint able to see the can. Like you can't be peering over a fence necessarily. You have to be able to see it just from where you are. But if the dog can access different physical terrains, how does that change what is acceptable?
Yeah, I mean, I'll defer to you on the legal mechanics, but I think what's clear to us is like they're going to use this to criminalize folks. So if it makes it easier to criminalize folks, that's what they're going to do with it. That's an interesting point we should definitely look into. And I also want to address, and thank you, Eugene, or EP, for answering those questions in the chat about who's on the Public Safety Committee. Yeah, any other questions from folks or in the chat? Yeah.
The question is about.
What's the question?
The question was that, what's our follow-up next steps on this robot dog site? And
Yeah.
people can-
Mm-hmm.
So we've got some pop ed coming out. One is this beautiful Myths and Lies we've got up on the screen that Tiff constructed. It's going to come out in a couple different types of ways. Like I said, these clips, some of these clips you just saw will be up on Twitter shortly after this meeting. And then we're also working on some pop ed material to highlight the normalization campaign around this robot dog. So folks might have seen this robot dog on the LA Times piece, comparing it to dogs you can adopt at the kennel. Folks might have seen a similar robot dog at the Super Bowl pre-show, Dancing with Jason Derulo. And Vogue also featured it on the runway. So there's a clear campaign, because I think what Hamid was getting at when he was asking what people's reactions were to this dog is universally there's been a visceral just aversion to this thing, right? It's creepy, plain and simple. There's a Black Mirror episode about this specific Boston Dynamics robot dog. And so they're counter to that, they've been trying to normalize. And I think also in response to all this resistance we've been seeing in New York and everywhere else around this robot dog, there's been a campaign to normalize it through the media. It was even in a pistachio commercial. So that's another one of the pop ed materials we're making. The other thing we want to do is we want to door knock. So we've already lined up at least one conversation with a neighborhood council in the Crenshaw area to talk about this robot dog. If you know any other groups that want to hear about it ahead of that vote, you can hit us up at stoplapdspying.com. But we're also going to go door to door in specific neighborhoods. We're going to be strategic about which neighborhoods we hit. But if that's something that interests you, if you're into door knocking, shoot us an email. And, we'll set that up.
Quick question. So is this document would also have like facts? Like, it says myths and lies. Would it also have facts to debunk it?
So Hamid was asking if there would be facts added to this document in addition to the myths and lies.
There will be, Hamid,
Yeah.
yes. The coalition will be providing, what you're looking at. These are just some of the myths and lies that we hear said over and over that we are going to be providing answers to and providing information demonstrating that these are very clear lies that can be very easily debunked in a lot of instances. Providing that information to the community. So that's going to be a part of that as well.
Like,
And we've got a hand raised from Yadi if you wanna, you can unmute.
Hi there. I'm going to take a couple minutes, so I apologize in advance for maybe my long-winded comment here, but I want to start with, you know what? I didn't introduce myself. So I'm Yadi and I do anti-surveillance activism. I hail from Pasadena, so thank you so much for having this hybrid so that I can join you and be an ally with this. And I've been with you along the way on this no robot dog journey. And I want to start with giving you props for that drone deployment map, which I think was very powerful visual. And I encourage you to use that as much as possible. And I think that it's important to make sure that the public is educated that this robot dog is military equipment. And this means that the law enforcement is militarizing its police force, its law enforcement force, by obtaining equipment like this. And like this unmanned ground vehicle, just like drones, which are unmanned aerial equipment, are actually now regulated under AB 481, which just went into effect last year. And it's to provide more transparency for the community and give them an opportunity to give input around the use of military equipment by pushing forth city council and local governments to have use policy. So I think that's a very important tool. And I don't want to step on your toes, because I know Stop LAPD has your own way of tackling government surveillance, but I think it's important to be aware of the different tools that are out there for you to leverage. And so I think that that's one strong way to kind of push back on this, aside from the absolutely no and having an outright ban on this. And the reason I bring this up is because one of the questions I throw back to you is, what was the reason for postponing the city council vote? We know what they mumble, but what could be the real reason? And it could be that they found out that maybe they'd be in non-compliance with AB 481, and that's something to look into and try to find out from some, some city council members that may be amenable to opposing this and finding out like what that reason is. Going through my notes here, talking about how there's non-taxpayer money that's being used to fund this equipment. One way to tackle that is simply by saying things like, how there's things you wouldn't want even if they were free. This would be one of them. And just because it's free doesn't mean that we want it in our communities. And then just really quickly, the payload aspect, I think, is something to really hone on as well, because payload basically means that it can carry stuff, and that could be weapons, bombs, who knows what. That has not been defined, and they have not prevented or limited what kind of things, what kind of guns or bombs or other equipment this robot dog can carry. And so I think that the use policy, again, is one to get law enforcement to be explicit and state out loud what they intend to use this equipment for, and say, is this going to be in children's playgrounds? Are you going to put guns on this? And, kind of box them in and say out loud like the bad stuff. I'm almost done here. Thank you for your time. The officer safety, yeah, I mean, that's what vendors tell law enforcement in order to push this equipment. So that's like a narrative that is like really deep seated. And I think that there should be like a little bit more research looking into San Francisco, who successfully also was able to back off from acquiring their own robot dog. And they were really good about getting national media attention, which you guys highlighted. So trying to see like how they were able to do that and to try to leverage that, because there's no reason that LA shouldn't be in the national media. And then finally, I just want to bring up that there is state legislation that would be of interest to this particular topic, and then government surveillance in general. For robot dogs specifically, there is a bill called AB 79. I'll put it in the chat, that you may want to write a letter of support, which is like regulating and restricting the use of robot dogs. And AB 1463, which is limiting, further regulating license plate readers. And then finally, AB 1034, trying to ban the facial recognition or expand the moratorium. So I'll put that in there. Thank you guys so much.
Hey, thanks so much, Yadi, for listing all those facts. Yeah, just on the robot dog bit, and you bring up San Francisco, and when I think about San Francisco, I think about a few months ago how the city and the county board of supervisors had a motion in play to add lethal munitions to their spot robot, right? So when we think about a payload capacity for this robot dog, you're absolutely right. That can mean anything. Right? And even when Chief Moore was talking about it at the Board of Police Commissioners after this vote, the example he gave was an officer who was shot. I don't know if this was in the LA, but an officer who was shot while trying to deploy tear gas, right? And talking about how if we had a robot dog, that wouldn't happen. But the implication there would mean that you're equipping this robot dog with tear gas to deploy, right? And so there is an implicit, we're going to weaponize this robot with that statement. And, even thinking about, I love that you brought up AB 481. Tiff had brought it up before too, the fact that this is military equipment, because there's an effort to soften this robot dog, right? That's part of the reason they made it a dog. When this guy, Brendan Schulman, was at city council, when they were debating the motion, he talked about how it had a payload capacity and immediately said it could deliver food and water. Like that's what the payload capacity was going to be for. And it could help the elderly. That's the other way they classified it. When this is a military robot, even under AB 481. So that's an important point, I think, for us to uplift. Regarding other pieces of legislation, we typically, we as a coalition are wholly abolitionists, and so we actually oftentimes organize against reforms because reforms we feel serve two functions. One is to legitimize policing, right? So oversight models around facial recognition technology, military technology, robotics like this, they serve to legitimize and codify them by adding this procedure that never provides any oversight, right? And never really intends to provide any oversight. Two, and this speaks to the donation component as well of this robot dog, they expand the city's budget. So I love that you name that. Even if it is free, even if it is a gift, we don't want it in our neighborhoods. We're saying it's not really free, right? So many of the surveillance technologies that make up the LAPD budget that we've seen have been donations, right? Body worn video was a donation that was tested out here in Skid Row. Since then, we've seen that at least, as far as we can tell, $67 million has been spent on body worn video equipment by the city. So it's not free down the line. And I think Boston Dynamics definitely recognizes that fact too. They see that this is going to start out as a $278,000 donation, but down the line, they're going to make bank off of it. That's why they've got this campaign nationally, right? That's why they've got robots with Vogue. It's because they see this as a money-making endeavor. And Axon, the body-worn video, is a perfect example of that. I know Tiff at the top of this meeting was talking about how there was a public safety motion in place. Well, it was a donation from the federal government for $1.5 million. That $1.5 million is going to Axon, the company that made this body-worn video device for their online cloud service, evidence.com. And they've now expanded to making LAPD's digital in-car video. So yeah, nothing's actually free. But those are all really, really important points. And we actually have a bill we've been organizing against alongside Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, AB 642, that we're going to talk about later on. So I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Those are really great points. And yeah, encourage us in the room as well, because we know what things kind of hit us in terms of stand out to us when they're presenting this. We'd love to hear from the community as well. Like, what are those things that you're like, this is the thing that really gets me. So yeah, encourage folks online as well in the chat, or if you haven't already, let us know what are those things that you think are most objectionable, most upsetting, or just sharing your thoughts overall.
I'm so sorry. And one last thing about why this wasn't voted on May 5th. It could have, very well could have been that it wasn't compliant with AB 481. I doubt, to me, that's not the case. What it read as to me is, we talk about Los Angeles as a police state often ways, because in LA, the police get whatever they want. If it's a budget expansion, they always get it. If it's a donation, they always get it. This oversight body, we talked about the Board of Police Commissioners, they've never said no, at least in the time I've been paying attention. They've never said no to the LAPD. I think what's likely happened here is, Krikorian, lapdog for the LAPD, felt like he didn't have the votes to get this motion across. And so I think there's going to be an effort in this interim, just like we're organizing community to rally against this robot dog. They're probably trying to organize the city council to rally for it. In fact, at that Board of Police Commissioners meeting immediately after this city council meeting, Chief Moore had even said, I'm willing to meet with any city council members that have any questions about this robot dog. So I think more than likely that's the effort, but maybe worth looking into whether or not, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm not sure what time we're at.
It's 7:20.
Okay, so yeah, just a time check. So at this point, I think we're wanting to just be asking folks if there are additional things that you can think of that we want to be kind of adding to this fight that we're describing. So we're going to be putting out this information that we're looking at now. We're going to be sharing some of that online, generating flyers, also to be sharing with community that way. We are interested in door knocking, doing outreach in communities that are most impacted by policing. We've talked about having a petition, which is something we did for the drones as well, which I think is impactful in terms of showing numbers, demonstrating numbers. So those are some of the things that we have. And if folks are interested in or have ideas of what else could we be doing? Should we be doing, checking in with certain groups, doing outreach to specific community groups? Are there spaces that you know of that we perhaps could be in talking about this? Those are things that we would love to hear from folks. So.
You have, are you planning to have people call in and send emails to their council members?
Absolutely, yeah. So with all these campaigns, what Hamid just asked is if we're planning on having people call in and email their council members. Yes, yeah, that's the objective of all these organizing efforts. And the other thing we're going to be doing too is having an organizational sign-on letter. So Yadi, I know you said you do anti-surveillance work. If you've got an org that would want to sign on, we can send that over to you. Yeah. Any other questions in the chat? Any questions in the room? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's pretty much where we're at with that. So I guess folks, let us know if you're interested in helping out or would like to get more information, and just stay tuned. We're going to be continue to talk about this a lot. We're going to be putting out some of this information that we're looking at very shortly, because this vote, we know it could be by May. It could be very much sooner. It's nearly May. So yeah, so that's where we're at.
Yeah. So lastly,
Yeah.
would it be okay? So we mentioned earlier how we've been organizing against this Assembly Bill, AB 642. And it is a facial recognition technology bill that was put forward by Assembly Member Phil Ting. It's backed by the California Association of Police Chiefs. And it's dangerous, right? It serves to, it presents itself as reining in kind of police violence and the usage of facial recognition technology. But just like any other, facial recognition or even any other surveillance technology reform bill, what it does is it codifies the usage of facial recognition technology, and it normalizes it. So we linked up with Black Lives Matter California, the anti-terrorism, anti-police terror project, thank you. And then and our partners here at LA Can, we've got an email and phone call campaign. And so I'll type in the links to both email and call the Public Safety Committee members. The Public Safety Committee was meant to vote on it this morning, but they actually didn't. They moved the vote to the 11th. So we want people to continue calling and emailing. April 11th. Yeah, thank you. So yeah.
That vote is April 11th?
Yes, I think
Okay.
so. Yeah, April 11th.
Okay. Cool. Okay, well, that's everything that we had in terms of updates on those fights. So the only thing left that we were going to talk about today was just to briefly mention the different working groups that we have, because these are ways that folks can plug in. But before I move into that, I'll just check that. Yeah, was there anything else to cover?
Yeah.
I'd love for somebody to do a good one. If they could.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously we need donations because that's how we operate, but we've got some really cool merch.
These are awesome.
So
Yes.
as folks know that, Stop LAPD Spying Coalition is not a super funded nonprofit corporation or anything. We just go off of, just the goodwill of people and donations and all. And here's a hoodie
Nice.
that we have. So, if folks are able to donate $60, we will offer them as this gift of the hoodie. And then, they are able to donate $40. We also have this crew neck. And then this t-shirt is a gift for a donation of $20. So if people want to do that, we'd really appreciate any support, any help. Just email us. And if you want something, we're going to put it out there too. So, it's not a sales pitch or anything. It's more or less like, just us that how we, that it's a community funded, community driven, a community supported, endeavor.
I got you, EP. Hold on.
Huh?
EP's asking to see the hoodie again.
EP, this is the best hoodie you'll ever see.
Yeah, that's the back.
What
Got the-
sizes do y'all have?
You're worried about. We have all the sizes. We got small, medium, large.
Extra large,
extra
two
large,
XL,
2XL.
and three
We
XL.
have the-
The hoodie, we have three, maybe we do.
I think we, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. we got
Okay.
you. We got you.
Nice. Right on.
All right. Well, that's all we got, y'all.
Oh, no, the
Oh,
update.
Yeah,
on the working
Oh,
groups.
yeah, I won't, have us hang around too much, but just to name, I mean, probably just literally name some of the working groups that we have going on that we'd love for folks to be plugging into. So as you know, like we have this one monthly community meeting. We also meet, internally, we have a working group meeting, which is a great place to learn more about some of these different working groups that I'm about to name. So if folks are interested in coming to that, that's on a Monday evening, usually the night before the coalition's general meeting. And basically, if you're interested in that, you can let me know and I can send you information for that. But as far as our working group meetings, we have our community policing one. We have one that is fighting against Sarah reports and learning more about how LAPD is currently targeting locations by calling them and designating them as Sarah locations, Sarah projects, which is a certain process that they then implement at those locations. So we have one working group that is learning more about that and where it's being targeted and how that's being done. We have a working group around how folks who are surveilled and tracked over social media, how that information is used. We also have architecture surveillance, which is where we are learning more about and bringing together all of the information that we have around all of these different types of surveillance that we talk about, and putting them into like op-ed materials, updating our information, getting stuff out there. So that's called our architecture surveillance working group. We also have academic complicity, which is that is a group that looks at how you have these institutions, organizations like UCLA, like UCI, that bolster policing and that actually help legitimize it and help keep policing in place. And so how academics fit with policing and the violence that occurs there. What else? War on youth, the
Yeah.
war on youth, that's its own fight.
Oh, within data driven.
Yeah, I was talking about working groups, so it's okay. Yeah, the war on youth is a group that,
Yeah.
that is a meeting.
You don't need to
that
plug us right now.
Maggio
We've got our
is-
own. Yeah, we got our own.
Yeah, that's a very legitimate fight that is
Sorry.
going on that folks can plug into on the second Tuesday night of the month, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
How could they forget?
What else?
Sits there, we said social media surveillance, academic complicity. Defund surveillance is a fight that we're bringing back. Shout out Ryan, who's done a lot of work there. We're just waiting to schedule a new time.
Yeah,
So that's another one where we look at, LAPD budget docs, budget expansion.
yeah, looking at how much all of this stuff costs, so that when they come asking for more money for the LAPD budget, we are able to share information about how much it does cost and also what is the impact of that, what's the harm done by that. So that's an overview of just kind of more of a listing of what we have for our working groups, but that is everything that we have for this evening. So we're so glad that folks could join with us. Thank you again for hanging in there with us, and stay tuned online for just constant updates on all of these things that we've talked about. And let us know if you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, ways that you would like to plug in. And we hope to see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Next week, the first Tuesday of the month is gender and sexuality. So if y'all want to plug in to organize those webinars, there's also a queer apocalypse event hosted by one of our members in gender and sexuality that's happening on March 31st, Friday, to celebrate the week of Trans Day of Vengeance. So everyone's welcome to that. That'll be in Echo Park at 7 p.m. And if you are looking for a flyer or something, you could look up Queer Apocalypse 2023. I want to say that's what it's called.
Thank you so much, Kim.
Kim,
Email us if you're interested in joining gender and sexuality stuff. We have a policing sex worker group that we're trying to launch. And yeah, very interesting collaborations, especially with the Watch the Watchers and you know, how that affects sex workers. So please feel free to email us. Thanks, y'all.
thank you, Kim. And any other community announcements or meetings that folks would like to announce? Right on. Okay, with that, then, thank you so much and good evening.
Thanks, everybody.